Hello there. Welcome to Healing Me Before We, a relationship reawakening podcast for couples who want to thrive. We bring to you a unique way of uncovering limiting beliefs about relationships by examining common uses of cliches. Heart Surfers. My name is Sharon, the Heart Lady. That's Thee, Heart Lady. And this is our co host, Dan, the Healing Man. How are you today, Dan?
I'm doing great, Sharon. Today is the first day of spring.
Happy New
And
Year.
yeah, I don't know if you can tell spring, at least by looking out the window from where I am today, because winter still wants to remain. And, it kind of brings us to our whole cliche today. And the cliche today is opposites attract. And the
Okay.
whole idea of like the seasons and the seasonal change and how we go from one season to another. And often, though, it's not as clear cut as we just go from winter into spring.
Yeah.
That it's sometimes it may go from one day winter to spring to summer and then back to winter. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that life, just like the weather, isn't predictable.
Yeah.
And when I talk about relationships aren't as clear cut as they may appear to be, including how we are attracted to other human beings.
Yes. So, absolutely. And one may say that spring is the opposite of fall and summer is the opposite of winter, but it's interesting how they complement each other at the
Mm.
same time. And so having the different seasons, no matter what part of the world, there are still seasonal changes, whether it's rain season or dry season. So we are part of nature. So it's really interesting on how people may say opposites attract. My thoughts, since you asked, opposites attract. I think that we're attracted to the things that we would like. We're attracted to things that are similar to us, but we're also attracted to things that we would like within ourselves. And it brings up a curiosity. I think not necessarily opposites work in a relationship, and it depends on how much an individual is accepting of how much that person is not like them, if that makes sense to you. So opposites attract magnets, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're the same, they'll come together, and depending on the pole, it'll pull apart. So I think that when the cliche comes up, opposites attract. Oh well, they're loud and I'm quiet, or they're short and they're tall. Um, it does have some credence, but in relationships, I would take it a little deeper.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. So if
Okay.
opposites attract, which I support, I don't believe it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. And we've talked about this before in our podcast about we're not bringing judgment to any of this. We're talking about just having an open dialogue. So let's use an example. If
Yeah.
if I remember when I was in my early adolescence as a young man, that we would go to this club, and on one side of the club they had the disco, and the other side of the club they had the rock and roll. Now, if I prefer the rock and roll, then I'm going to stay on that side and listen to that music. If I want to dance, I know then I have to go over to the disco side because that's where the people are who want to dance. And so I could be a rock and roll person who wants to dance. And so I need to pick myself up and shift and move myself to the other side to find someone who wants to dance. Because most of the people on the rock and roll side, they just want to stand around and, stay tight to the wall and go like this. That's their dancing. Or they might dance a little bit without moving a whole lot. And what I'm saying is, I know that it's important then, if I really want to dance and move and groove, that I have to go to the other side and find someone else who wants to dance.
Interesting. So let me throw a little fun in that. So you said
Sure.
you're a little bit of rock and roll and you're a little bit of disco.
I'm
Well,
both.
and I am a lot of reggae and some R&B.
Okay.
So if I really want to enjoy myself and dance, I'm going over to the reggae.
I gotcha.
And if I want to chill, I go over to the R&B. So it's the two difference. So I had to compliment you with those opposites.
And I appreciate that. And what we're saying is that in order for me then to meet my need, you're right. You were talking earlier about uh, I find someone that can provide something for me that will allow me then to express myself in the way that I want to express myself. I know if I stay on the rock and roll side, that the dancing is not going to fulfill me in the way that I want to dance. So I choose then to shift and to go to the other side and seek out someone who will support me in my desire to dance.
Right. So Dan, going back to relationships. So you know, oftentimes couples come and say we are complete opposites,
Mm,
and that can cause conflict.
absolutely.
So one likes this, someone likes something else, and so they're trying to find that happy medium. So, and then some people will say we're so much alike, and because we're so much alike, that also causes conflict.
Well, I
um,
agree with both those things. I
well,
really do, because you know what? I said this to my wife, Maggie, yesterday. I go, I don't know if I could stand being with someone like me all the time. And I say that in all truth, because I'm not the easiest person to be with, and that's okay. It's important to recognize that there's a reason why we are attracted to people who are different from us,
yeah.
and that's not a bad thing at all, because it gives us the opportunity or invitation to expand. Right? Now, going back to what you were talking about with the magnets and polarity, and I remember I had a friend, he was a high school physics teacher, and he said, everything is physics. Everything in life is physics. And I heard what you said, and I agree with you. Let's not just keep it so simplistic, because there's more to it than just two magnets and how they're attracted to each other and their polarity.
Right.
Because humans are far more complex within magnets.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is to recognize that when we talk about something like yin and yang, we don't even really fully understand that. Most of us are confused by it. First off, most of us don't say yin, we say yin and yang. And what they are is using a word that you said earlier. They're complementary opposites. They are not the type of opposite that promotes conflict, oppositional conflict. And I
Mhm.
think it's important that we recognize that these are very different ways of looking at the whole idea of opposites. They don't have to be oppositional, they can be complementary, and
Yeah.
they can blend into each other. The challenge is when someone meets another person and they find that person in a way that complements who they are, and they only take advantage of it though in that one setting. For instance, I go to the disco side and I find that person that meets my need to dance. Okay. And in that way, that's very helpful and supportive. Now, we go back home though, and we get into a relationship, and I want to listen more to rock and roll than I want to listen to disco. And the other person wants to listen more to disco than they want to listen to rock and roll. Now, what happens is we get set in our own ways and we become rigid
Yeah.
rather than complementary or
Yeah.
flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good analogy there. And so, for our listeners and viewers, what do we do about that? How do we? I think what you said earlier, when you were talking about between you and Maggie, you recognize certain aspects that you was like, I don't know if I could live with that. And I think it's being aware that you do have some idiosyncrasies, or you do have a part of you that your partner may not enjoy. And that when you recognize that and are able to talk about that, um, and meet it and accept it, or talk about it, so that there can be a happy medium, right? So, for instance, uh, I'm trying to think of an example here. I had one in my head, and then uh, it went away. So let's go with your disco and your rock and roll. So maybe we can have a time where you can listen to your rock and roll, maybe at a different time and on your own time. And I'm not taking that away from you, but maybe when we're together, we can listen to a little bit of both and feel good about that. So
Mhm.
just trying to find some way where you can work together and saying, okay, I don't want to hear rock and roll first thing in the morning. But if you want to hear it, that's fine, but you listen to it with your earbuds. So I'm not, and then you may say, well, I don't want to listen to disco all the time. Fine. So it's being able to work together. So
Mhm.
we would both like different things, but how can we bring it together and find some negotiation? I don't think
Mm.
you have to sacrifice anything. I don't
Mm.
believe in sacrificing in relationships. I do believe in negotiating.
Okay. You know, you've used this phrase several times, happy medium. And I'm going to say I agree to disagree with you,
Mhm.
because what is a happy medium? It's kind of like the idea that any relationship is ever 50-50. I don't believe in 50-50 because I don't believe it exists. I believe it tends to always be one over the other, 70-30, and then sometimes the other one's 40-60. And what happens in relationships, unfortunately, is there are habits. And I'll use this relationship example of giver and taker. Okay. Going back to what I said earlier, is that we are attracted to the piece of us that we feel may be missing. And you said that as well. A giver is attracted to a taker. A taker is attracted to a giver for a reason, because it
Mhm.
gives the other person the opportunity to live out what they feel is their identity as a giver, or their
Okay.
identity as a taker. And so we seek out what we believe or perceive as fulfilling how we see ourselves and our identities. Okay. And what I'm saying is that I don't ever see this kind of 50-50 relationship. I think what it becomes is an acceptance of the other person for who they are, not who we want them to be. And that is a struggle for many people, because people get set, they get rigid in the way they perceive themselves. And so I believe there's an opportunity in every relationship to shift. If I'm in a place of, I've used this word before, readiness. Am I ready to begin to recognize that, wait a minute, this other person, yes, this person supports me in the way that I see myself as a giver or a taker. I can also shift in the way that I can become, instead of the taker, the giver, or
Yeah.
instead of the giver, the taker. And that's what makes a relationship work. Not always
Okay.
seeking that equal balance of 50-50, which I believe many
Okay.
people may consider to be the thing to strive for. And then they get frustrated because they recognize that it ain't going to happen.
I hear you. So you interpreted happy medium as 50-50, which I do not. So
Okay.
so a happy medium for me is that we've negotiated and we decided together how it's going to work out rather than creating the conflict. So a happy medium is not given 50-50
Okay.
because I believe in a relationship we give 100% of each of ourselves. That's different than when we are talking about a particular tangible situation, as we were talking about the music. Do you want to play? Do you want to play? Do you not want to hear this? Those are the type of things was like, listen, let's see, when is it best. Well, we can do that even with do you like your eggs scrambled or fried? A happy medium to me would be like, okay, we got two eggs, you fry yours and I'll scramble mine. So it's not necessarily a 50-50, but it is coming together and saying, all right, what's going to work out for the both of us. um, Oftentimes in relationships we concentrate more on the individual personality rather than concentrating on
Mm-hmm.
what is the situation
Mm-hmm.
that we are disagreeing on, and can we come to an overstanding, an understanding, an honest understanding of why we disagree, and can we get together and figure out how it can work out? So that is my
Mm-hmm.
definition of a happy medium.
Okay. And see, I appreciate what you said, because I did not understand, and how often does that happen in a relationship, that
Yeah.
I made a judgment about your happy medium as being a 50-50.
Right.
Because if you look at what medium is on a stove when you're cooking eggs, it's right in the
Mhm.
middle.
That's right. So
And
why
so,
can't we meet together in the middle and figure it out so that it's not too hot and it's not too cold? And we're going back to Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
well, let's use your example of the eggs, okay?
Okay.
Some people might look at the solution, and I don't think the solution is a right or wrong or good or bad one. It's whatever
Mhm.
works for the couple, the people in the
Okay.
relationship, right? One day someone's cooking and they make scrambled eggs, and then the next day somebody's cooking and they make the fried eggs. And it's the person's willingness or unwillingness to be flexible and say,
Hmm.
I only eat scrambled eggs. I don't eat fried eggs. No,
Right.
wait, they're eggs. They're eggs. What's
Hmm.
changed? They're still eggs. They're just cooked in a different way.
And it's
And
preference.
yes, it's preference. And often preference, though, becomes standard, and then standard
Nice.
becomes
That's good.
concrete, and then
That's good.
concrete becomes rigid, and then rigid becomes oppositional, all
That's good.
over something like eggs.
But then again, in that analogy, we still have respect.
Hmm.
So I say respect is that if a person says, I don't like scrambled eggs, you can't compromise and say, well, we're going to have scrambled eggs today and tomorrow we'll have
Hmm.
fried eggs. No,
Hmm.
that's why I said, you don't like scrambled eggs? Fine, I won't cook scrambled eggs, but I
Hmm.
love scrambled eggs. So I'll cook it for me and I
Hmm.
don't mind making your fried eggs, or
Yeah.
you fry your eggs and I scramble my eggs,
Yeah.
you know, in that context. So to me, that's where we are meeting together. Those are
Hmm.
two opposites in a sense, but we're going to say, all right, let's not argue over eggs. I'll make sure you have your fried eggs for breakfast with your toast, and I'll have my scrambled eggs with my muffin. So family, Dan and I, we are both talkers, and we could definitely go on and on about opposites attract. I think for me, if I was to finalize it, I would say that we are attracted to what we would like within ourselves. I think we are attracted to what will help us heal. I feel that we are attracted to also what complements us. So, and you know, and I think a lot about that with my husband and I. We complement each other, and that keeps the interest growing.
Mhm.
That keeps that keeps the togetherness because we find interest in he may like this, I may like that, but we're interested in the same thing. So that brings us
Mhm.
together. Um, rather that we so go back to the egg analogy, right?
Mhm.
And this is not true because we don't eat eggs, but I'm using that analogy.
Yeah.
We love eggs, but I like it this way and you like it that way. But it's still eggs, so we can still come together and find that
Mhm.
commonality there. And I think that's where, when you're talking about opposite attract, there is, in order for it to work in a relationship, you want to find the commonality rather than
Mhm.
the difference,
There you
right?
go. I
And
love
being able
that.
to
Find
negotiate.
a place where we are in agreement
Yes,
over
exactly.
where we are in conflict or disagreement. And
Exactly.
I think that's a really important thing for couples and
Yeah.
relationships. That often what happens is people tend to focus their energy more on their differences, which
Yeah.
then tends to go more towards the conflict and the opposition
Yeah.
rather than looking for the places where they're in agreement. And
And
you
that's
know,
society at large, right? That's what's
I
happening right now,
oh
right?
I agree
In the
absolutely.
communities. Yeah.
And then it's also, you know, we've heard before, pick and choose your battles, right? What are you really going to give your attention and energy to? It depends
Yeah.
on your priority.
Right.
If the topic is, or the issue is, how are we cooking our eggs? If that's the big issue, right? In the
Yeah.
relationship,
Yeah.
well, I mean, without judgment, I'm saying these are the things that people have to kind of look at and go, is this really that important in our
Yeah.
relationship for it to thrive?
Yeah.
As how the eggs are prepared or
Yeah.
not prepared? Because as you
Yeah.
said, there's lots of creative solutions where both people can have what they want without feeling like they had to use your word sacrifice for the other person.
Yeah. And so, how, you know what? I'm folks, I hope you stay tuned to this discussion because it could go very deep. But I also respect those who, couples who have different religions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've heard of the Catholic who may celebrate the Christmas, and then you have those who may be of you know, in the Jewish faith, and they celebrate Hanukkah.
Mm-hmm.
And you often wonder, how do they live? How do they work together? And they have such different holidays and such different ideologies. How do they work together? And then also you have those of different cultural and ethnic backgrounds that are attracted to each other and have to come and not only have to deal with their own personal views and beliefs within their cultural confines, but also then you have other people who are dipping into your business
Absolutely.
and trying to create conflict as well. So when we're talking about opposite attracts and how couples live together when they're have cultural, religious, and ethnic differences, I think it's so interesting. And watching those, how it works,
Mm-hmm.
is so very interesting. And it's a learning aspect. Now,
Well,
how we can
here's
learn from those is watching children.
mm, children.
Children who don't know about, I know I'm talking about toddlers, those who
Mm-hmm.
have not already been programmed to the way their
Mm-hmm.
family has is teaching them. But when you watch children play, play is play for them, and it doesn't matter the cultural background, the color of the skin, the
Mm-hmm.
ethnicity. It doesn't matter. They just know play, and they get along well. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I have to
Well,
say for
you
opposites
know,
attract.
I'm just gonna finish with this. Your word, play. That's the
Okay.
important piece that I think often gets lost in a relationship is play. Play with each other in many and different ways to find a place where each person feels supported. Each person feels not being judged, not being
Respected.
criticized, respected, yes, to use your word. And when we bring that element of play into it, then there's laughter and there's humor and there's aloha, awareness, love, optimism, humor, and action. In
Absolutely.
actions that are supporting each other rather than being divisive and promoting conflict and opposition. And when two people in a relationship can laugh together, that's healing. So, my
Absolutely.
suggestion is when we're in a conflict with our significant other, to find a place in that conflict to laugh, whether it's
Yes.
at the breakfast table when the person forgot that the other person doesn't like eggs this certain way, and when they're being served and you see how the other person is receiving what you are offering them, and just laugh about it,
Mm.
because it's only as big of a deal as we make of it.
There we go. So, my quote to wrap up this session, uh, I'm calling it a session. Um, there is a quote by Jodi Piquet. Piquet. I'm not sure how she pronounced her name, but on the surface, we're polar opposites. Under the skin, though, we're the same. People think that we are, that they're getting it, and they're always wrong. So I'm not sure if I'm reading that right, and they're always wrong. They know that they're getting, and they're always wrong. So this is kind of crazy. I like the fact it says on the surface we're polar opposites. Under the skin, we are the same.
Mm.
So I'm gonna keep it at that because that last part of that sentence I didn't get.
It's a little
What about you?
confusing.
Yeah.
Well, what you're saying is that we have an opportunity or an invitation to see beyond that thin veil of what may first have attracted me to you, or what may have first attracted you to me, and what there is really beneath that is I didn't really need you to find that piece of me unless I thought that you are the thing that completes me. And if I see that the relationship is now based upon my need for you to give me completeness,
Yeah.
instead of recognizing that really the invitation is for me to recognize that I find myself attracted to you because there's something within you that's still there within me that I just have not come to an awareness of.
Soft.
That a
Beautiful.
giver is really a taker, and a taker is really a giver. They are not just givers, they are not just takers.
Absolutely. Well, I think with that, folks, we can say that even though Dan and I may look like opposites, we do share a commonality, and that is specializing in relationships. We believe healing me before we. We believe that heal yourself first and then come together.
Hmm.
So, with that, we can say we agree.
I
All
agree.
right, Dan and Heart Surface. We look forward to hearing your comments, for you sharing. Maybe there are other cliches that you would like for us to explore. So please, you can, as they say, as you young folks say, slide into my DM at the Heart Lady. That's THEE Heart Lady. And you can get in touch with Dan.
Go to DM, yeah, danmikins.com. And that's how you can find me, with radically healing from the inside out. And I just want to close today with this, is that we're starting to see how our cliches begin to blend with each other, including the one that we talked about previously about you complete me. and how it's connected to the idea of opposites attract, that we are attracted to something that we believe is missing within ourselves. So we seek it from an outside in source instead of recognizing that really it's an invitation to see through that other person that there is that quality as well within me. And I am simply, by my relationship with the other, recognizing that now that I wasn't able to recognize before.
Well, all right then. Well said. So we see you, Heart Surface. Listen out, check us out on our YouTube channel, Healing Me Before We, or just pop it in and just listen to the audio. Y'all take care now. Have a wonderful day.
Surf's up.